And I mean, this gets back to that initial topic of what did the court decide, right? So we had the Patriot Act, and the Patriot Act was this giant law that had been written long before 9/11. It was just sitting on the shelf. And the Department of Justice, the FBI, they knew they couldn't pass this. They knew nobody would live with it because it was an extreme expansion of government authority. And then 9/11 happened, right? And that's really where it all started to go wrong. That's where we got the rise of this new authoritarianism that we see continuing in the United States today, right? Like, if you think, and like you have problems with what's happening under Donald Trump, but you also had problems under like what was happening with Obama and the expansion of the war on whistleblowing. You had problems with the way drone strikes were going out of control. And you go, well, really, where did this all start, right? Where did it start to go wrong? Personally, I think 9/11 was where we made a fundamental mistake. And that was we were so frightened in the moment because we had had such an extraordinary and rare terrorist attack succeed, which, by the way, could have been prevented. And I think we discussed this in the last episode. The Congress, they were just terrified. They said, look, intelligence services, cops, FBI, whoever, anything you want, blank check, here you go. That was the Patriot Act. And at the time, groups like the American Civil Liberties Union, they were like, we are worried that this goes too far because, God bless them, that's what the American Civil Liberties Union does. And one of the provisions that they had a problem with was this Section 215 of the Patriot Act, which I believe they were calling at the time the library records provision. And what it said, basically, this tiny little phrase in the law said, the FBI can basically get any records that it deems relevant to a counterterrorism investigation under a warrant. And the worst thing the ACLU could imagine was that these guys would go to the library and get what kind of books you're reading. And like, oh, shock, horror, this is the worst thing these guys could do. And so they protested and they lost. And this passed and it went on. And lo and behold, 10 years later, we find out in 2013, they had used this provision that people were worried about just going after individuals' library records to instead get the phone records of not an individual, not a group, but everybody in the United States who was making calls on U.S. telecommunications providers delivered to the NSA daily by these companies, right? So no matter who you were, no matter how innocent you were, the FBI was getting these because they said, well, every phone call is relevant to a counterterrorism investigation. And the court went, finally, this is 7 years after 2013, they went, guys, that's too much. If your definition of relevance is basically anything, anywhere, all the time is relevant to a counterterrorism investigation, the question is, what then is not relevant? What is the limiting principle on this? Where is the end? And this is a very important thing because even if it's not enough, right? Even if this doesn't shut down all the programs, the program was actually already stopped a few years ago because of previous court decisions and changes in law. The fact that the courts are finally beginning to look at these, the impacts of these sweeping new technologies that allow governments to see all of these connections and interactions that we're having every day, they're finally putting limits on it. And that is, I think, transformative. It is the foundation of what we will see in the future will begin to be the first meaningful guarantees of privacy rights in the digital age.